Well, my first question is, Chief Justice Alexander, you ran in the 2006 election, and before that, the state had really not seen a lot of money in their judicial elections. But in 2006, it was reported that $4.5 million was spent on ads by the candidates and by these independent spending groups. When did you first realize that this was going to be such an expensive and politically charged election?
Well, I learned. I learned that I was going to have an opponent early in 2006. The gentleman who ran against me, his name was John Groen. He was kind of courteous enough to come by the Temple of Justice, which is where the Supreme Court is located here in Olympia. That's the name of our building. Mm-hmm. He came by and introduced himself. He'd argued cases in front of the court, so I knew who he was. And he was a good lawyer. And he said he was going to run against me. And we talked and chatted and shook hands. And he left. So I knew he was going to run against me. I also had heard rumors that he was going to be heavily supported by the Building Industry Association of Washington, an organization that has been active in campaigns, including a judicial campaign a couple of years before, in which the candidate they were supporting prevailed, had come to the court. And so I thought, probably would have a well-financed campaign, but I had no idea that it was going to reach the dimensions that you mentioned, with something like $4 million coming into the total.
He was adorable. Stevie had just turned 3 years old before he was beaten and tortured to death. The Anders decision let my son's killer walk free after serving less than a third of his murder sentence. You could have a convicted murderer released on the Anders decision next door, and you wouldn't even know it. If Justice Alexander hadn't voted for this decision, this wouldn't have happened. Judge Alexander is way out of touch with this issue. I'm here supporting John Groen, because John Groen is for victims and their families.
And it really was an aberration. We just had not had a history in Washington of large amounts of money coming into the Supreme Court campaigns. They run ads now in movie theaters. Yeah. That ad came out, I said, oh my gosh, I can't get away from this.
In a movie theater?
In a movie theater.
Wow.
And I got a little down about that, because I was just, the ads for him were so ubiquitous.
But you managed to pull it out.
But I thought I could win, but there were a few moments there where I did say to my wife about a week before the election, I said, I might get whipped in this election, and if we do, I want to be classy about it. I actually wrote out a little statement,
just in case.
I never had to use about wishing my opponent good luck and so on.
And we did a study at the Center for American Progress last year, and we looked at many states that had seen these soft on crime attack ads. And we looked at the Washington and Georgia, which I've mentioned today, that both of those states, they saw a huge increase in independent spending in 2006, and then it just dropped off. And we looked at criminal cases kind of before and after those elections. And what we found was that the percentage of rulings in favor of prosecutors peaked in 2006, right around the time that we were having all these soft on crime attack ads flooding the airwaves. And in Washington, it wasn't as steep of a peak, but in Georgia, it was a very clear trend. But what we did see in Washington was between 2006 and 2008, there was a 21% decline in the percent of rulings in favor of prosecutors. So it seemed like after 2006, the court was less likely to rule in favor of prosecutors. I'm wondering, do you think that in some courts, these soft on crime ads can actually influence the way judges make decisions in criminal cases?
I don't think so, no. I think the public, they respect their prosecutors and law enforcement people, but they want the judges to be independent of them or defense counsel, either one. And so I think they recognize that judges are going to make some decisions that law enforcement folks are not going to like.
Yeah.
Others that they will like. So I haven't sensed people being punished for that reason.
I talked to some other judges after we issued this report last year, and I talked to one justice in particular from the Mississippi Supreme Court. And I think in Mississippi they don't necessarily have the same attitudes toward tough on crime that they do in Washington probably. But it seems like in his case, the ads were more effective in getting voters to vote against him. And he lost his second election. He had some other issues going on, but it was Justice Oliver Diaz in Mississippi. But he actually told me during a panel discussion.
He was defeated?
Yeah, in 2008. He won his first race in 2000, then he lost in 2008 after he faced some really nasty attack ads. But he told me a story at this panel discussion about a conversation with another justice on the Mississippi Supreme Court. And this justice told him flat out that he was not going to vote in favor of criminal defendants anymore after he saw the attack ads that were run against Justice Diaz. So I feel like in other states we've seen, we've seen these ads be more effective in influencing voter behavior. And it seems like in that situation you might have even more pressure on judges.
I don't know this judge you're talking about, but I don't know how a person can say that and wear the black robe. I mean, you're saying I'm not going to rule a certain way because of the way people have presented themselves in an election. I think that's just terrible. You hear that? You just have to. I know it sounds like a cliche, but you just have to call the cases the way you see them and not worry about what the effect is on the electorate.
Yeah.
On the other hand, in the way you personally conduct yourself, your personal deportment, I think that is legitimate. If a trial judge senses that has a sense that people think this judge is rude to people and stuff, then he better change his ways.
Sure.
But not how they decide cases.